The night was calm in the desert, the kind of stillness where even the wind seemed to pause. Jake Miller was sitting outside his small workshop, sipping a cup of coffee while looking at the endless stretch of stars. He had always loved the quiet of this place. After years in the Air Force, fixing jet engines and dealing with noisy hangars, the silence was his friend. But tonight, something caught his attention. A flicker in the sky. At first, Jake thought it might be a plane or maybe a helicopter flying far away. But the lights didn't move like normal aircraft. They darted left, then right, then straight up, and finally dipped low in a quick arc. The colors were strange, too. Soft silver mixed with a pale blue, glowing against the dark sky. Jake leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He stood up, setting his coffee down without thinking, and reached for his old pair of binoculars. Through the lenses, he saw the lights much clearer now, moving faster and in patterns no human pilot could manage. His heart gave a quick beat of excitement. Maybe it was some secret military test flight. That thought wasn't too far-fetched. He'd worked on secret projects before, but deep down, a quiet part of him whispered. It was something else entirely. Then, it happened. A sudden flash lit up the horizon, brighter than a flare. The lights shot downward, as if falling from the sky, and disappeared behind the ridge. A faint rumble reached Jake's ears a second later. Whatever it was, it had crashed. Jake didn't think twice. He grabbed his jacket, got into his old truck, and started the engine. The dirt road to the ridge was rough, but he knew it well. As he drove, a strange feeling filled his chest, half excitement, half nervousness. By the time he reached the ridge, a faint silver glow was visible just beyond it. He parked the truck, grabbed a flashlight, and made his way up the slope. When he reached the top, his breath caught in his throat. Below him, in the shallow valley, sat something that didn't belong to Earth. It wasn't shaped like a plane or helicopter. It was sleek, curved, almost like a drop of metal frozen in midair, except it was resting crookedly on the ground. Steam or smoke rose from several small vents along its side. Jake made his way down carefully. As he got closer, he saw that the metal surface wasn't like anything he had ever touched before. It seemed almost alive, shifting colors faintly under the light. He crouched near a dented section and ran his hand along the cool surface. A sound made him freeze. It was soft at first, like a whisper, but it grew louder. Two voices speaking rapidly in a language he didn't recognize. He slowly turned his head toward the noise. From the shadowed side of the ship, two figures stepped into the faint light. Jake's eyes widened. They were human-shaped, but clearly not human. Both were tall and slender, their skin pale with a faint shimmer, and their eyes large, silver, and almost glowing. Their hair was long and the color of moonlight. They were nearly identical in every way. Twins. Jake's mind scrambled for an explanation, but before he could speak, one of them pointed at him and said something quickly in that strange language. The other responded with urgency, her voice trembling slightly. I don't understand, Jake said, raising his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. The twins exchanged a look. Then one of them stepped forward. Her voice was soft, hesitant, but in broken English she said, "Please, help, ship, broken, danger." Jake blinked. "You're asking me to fix this?" He gestured toward the strange vessel. Both nodded quickly, their silver eyes locking onto his. The one who spoke earlier continued, "Need repair. No. Time." He could see the worry in their faces, and something in their tone told him this wasn't just about fixing an engine. They looked desperate. Jake walked a slow circle around the ship, examining the damage as best as he could. He spotted scorched panels, cracked plating, and, near the back, an open compartment with a glowing core that was flickering weakly. It reminded him of a power source, maybe even the ship's heart. "I'm just a mechanic," Jake muttered to himself. "But I've seen worse. When he looked back at the twins, they were standing close together, watching him anxiously. In the dim light, he noticed they had the same sharp cheekbones, the same small tilt of the head when they listened, mirrored in perfect unison. Their clothes were simple, almost like fitted uniforms, but made of some smooth fabric that shimmered faintly with their every movement. "You're lucky I know my way around engines," Jake finally said, though he wasn't sure if they understood all his words. He gestured toward his truck. "Workshop, tools, I can help." One of the twins stepped closer, her eyes brightening slightly. She pointed at him, then at the truck, and nodded. The other twin gave a small, relieved smile, just for a moment, before looking back at the ship with concern. As they walked toward the truck, Jake felt the weight of the situation settling on him. This wasn't just a late-night repair job. These girls, whoever or whatever they were far from home, and whatever had brought them here hadn't been friendly. He didn't know why they trusted him, but he knew one thing: he couldn't turn them away. When they reached the truck, the twins hesitated, glancing at each other before climbing in. Jake slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and headed back toward his workshop. In the rearview mirror, he caught sight of their silver eyes watching him silently, their expressions unreadable but filled with something he couldn't quite place. Hope. Somewhere deep inside, Jake knew his life had just changed forever. The ride back to Jake's workshop was quiet, except for the rumble of the truck's old engine. The twins sat close together in the passenger seat, their eyes scanning the dark desert outside. Every now and then, one would whisper something in, their strange language, and the other would answer softly. Jake pretended not to listen, though he caught a few English words scattered in between. Safe, engine, and time. They seemed nervous, but not about him. It was more like they were worried about something else out there, something he couldn't see. That thought made Jake press the gas a little harder. When they reached his workshop, a wide, metal-roofed building next to his small house, he parked right outside and motioned for them to follow. The twins stepped out of the truck cautiously, looking around at the dusty yard, the stacks of old parts, and the faint orange glow from a work lamp inside. Jake pushed open the workshop door. "All right," he said. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Inside, the space was filled with tools, spare parts, and half-finished projects. To most people, it might have looked messy, but Jake knew exactly where everything was. The twins stepped in slowly, their silver eyes darting from one shelf to another. One of them reached out to touch a rusty carburetor, running her fingers over it as if it were some kind of artifact. Jake set down his tool bag and gestured for them to sit. "You can rest. I'm going to need to know exactly what's broken." They, twin who spoke English the best, stepped forward. She pointed at her chest, then at her sister, saying, "Lyra, Nova." She was Lyra. Her sister gave a small nod when her name was said. "Jake," he replied, pointing at himself. Lyra pointed toward the truck, where the faint outline of their ship still sat hidden in the dark. "Core, broken, no power, no, leave." She hesitated, then added, "Need fix, quick." Jake thought for a moment. "Core," he repeated. "That glowing thing in the back of your ship?" Lyra nodded quickly. "Yes. Heart of ship. Without, no shield, no travel." Nova, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward and held out a small, round device about the size of an apple. It was made of smooth silver metal and pulsed with dim light. "Part damaged," she said softly. Jake took it, turning it over in his hands. It felt lighter than it looked, and the light inside flickered weakly, almost like it was struggling to stay alive. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted, "but maybe I can work something out." For the next hour, Jake examined the device under his work lamp while Lyra and Nova moved around the workshop, watching him closely. They didn't sit still for long. They kept looking at his tools, picking up wrenches, and whispering to each other about how strange human equipment was. At one point, Lyra asked, "You fix many ships?" Jake smiled faintly. "Not like yours, but I've fixed engines all my life. Planes, trucks, even a few boats. Machines are machines. You just have to figure out how they work." Nova tilted her head. "Machines speak to you?" Jake chuckled. "Not exactly, but they tell you things, if you know how to listen." The twins seemed to think about that, exchanging a look. Then they began showing him small tools from their own world, tiny, delicate instruments that could cut metal without heat or scan a part without touching it. Jake was amazed, but he still preferred his heavy, reliable human tools. As the night went on, they began to talk more. Lyra told him they were explorers, traveling between star systems to study worlds and trade knowledge. Their home, she explained, was a place with floating cities suspended by energy crystals, and the skies there were filled with shimmering rings of light. Nova added that twins in their culture shared a deep connection. They could sense each other's feelings even from far away. Jake found himself fascinated. "So you can tell what your sister's feeling right now?" Lyra smiled slightly. "Yes. She feels curious." Nova blushed faintly and looked away, clearly not used to being the subject of conversation. But as they talked, Jake noticed something. They never mentioned their family, their planet's name, or the reason they had come near Earth. When he asked directly, they exchanged a quick glance and changed the subject. That told him there was more to their story. By the middle of the night, Jake had carefully opened the damaged part. Inside, he saw a delicate web of thin, glowing filaments. Many of them burned or snapped. It reminded him of circuitry, but it wasn't made of metal. It looked almost organic. He sighed. "This is going to take some work, and I don't have the exact materials you need." Nova leaned forward. "Can human metal work?" Jake thought about it. "Maybe if I can combine it with what's left of your original part. But it won't be perfect. It'll get you moving, but I can't promise how long it'll last." Lyra exchanged a silent look with Nova, then nodded. "Do it." They worked together through the night. The twins fetched tools when he needed them, held lights, steady, and even used some of their own instruments to help him see the damage more clearly. At one point, Lyra used a small device that created a thin beam of blue light, sealing two broken filaments like magic. By sunrise, Jake had made progress. The core part was holding together better, its light steadying slightly. He set it down on the table and wiped his hands on a rag. "It's not finished yet, but we're getting there." Nova looked at him with something like relief. "Thank you, Jake," he shrugged. "Don't thank me yet. We still have work to do, and I think you're not telling me everything. What's really going on?" The twins hesitated. Lyra's silver eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of fear there. "Later," she said softly. "We tell later." Jake didn't push. He had a feeling whatever the truth was, it would change everything. For now, all he could do was keep working and hope that whatever danger they were in didn't find its way to his doorstep before the repairs were done. The following night was quieter than usual, but not in a way that felt peaceful. Jake could sense something in the air, a kind of tension that made the back of his neck prickle. He had been working on the twins' ship part all day, carefully, replacing broken filaments and reinforcing weak connections. Lyra and Nova had helped, but he noticed they were more distracted than before. They kept glancing toward the workshop door as if expecting something or someone to appear at any moment. Around midnight, Jake was alone in the workshop. The twins had gone into the small house to rest for a while, though he doubted they were actually sleeping. He leaned over the glowing core, using a magnifying lens to connect two fine strands, when he heard a faint hum. At first, he thought it was just a piece of machinery warming up, but it grew louder and sharper, like an electric buzz in the air. Jake frowned and set down his tools. He stepped outside into the cool desert night, looking toward the ridge. In the distance, hovering just above the ground, was a small black shape with red lights blinking in a slow pattern. It wasn't like any drone he'd ever seen. It moved with unsettling smoothness, completely silent except for that strange hum. The hair on his arm stood up. This wasn't a toy or hobby drone. This was something advanced. And probably not friendly. The drone shifted in the air, and Jake realized with a jolt that it was pointing directly at his workshop. Slowly, it began to glide closer. "Lyra! Nova!" he called out sharply. The twins appeared in the doorway almost instantly, their eyes wide. Lyra's gaze followed his pointing hand, and the moment she saw the drone, her face changed. Fear, clear, and raw. "They found us," she whispered. Jake turned to her. "Who? Found you?" Nova stepped forward, her voice low but urgent. "Not from your world. Mercenaries. They want our ship. We'll follow anywhere." Jake glanced back at the drone, which was now scanning the workshop with a thin beam of red light. "And you didn't think to tell me this sooner?" Lyra shook her head. "We hoped. They far. No time. We must finish ship. Leave before they come." Jake's mind raced. If this was just a scout, it meant there were more coming, probably bigger and probably armed. He quickly ushered them back inside the workshop and shut the door. "All right," he said firmly. "We're working through the night. That ship needs to be ready by morning." The twins nodded without hesitation. Jake locked the doors, pulled down the blinds, and returned to the glowing core on the table. Every minute felt like a countdown. Outside, he could still hear the faint hum of the drone circling. As they worked, Jake decided to push for answers. "These mercenaries, why? Are they after you? Is it the ship, or something else?" Lyra hesitated, then said, "They hunt rare things. Our ship, special technology. If they take, they will use for war." Nova added softly. "And we are also rare. Twins, with Link. Some want to use us too." Jake felt a chill. It wasn't just about fixing a ship anymore. This was about keeping them safe from people who saw them as something to be stolen. Hours passed in a blur. Jake welded, adjusted, and rewired with a speed he hadn't needed since his Air Force days. The twins moved with equal focus, their movements perfectly in sync. Nova would hand him a tool before he even asked, while Lyra adjusted the scanner to check his progress. Just before dawn, the faint hum outside faded. For a moment, Jake thought maybe the drone had left. But then Nova's voice broke the silence. "No, they call more. Soon. Big ship." Jake knew she was right. The mercenaries weren't going to give up. If they had the location, they would come in force. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Then we don't wait for them. As soon as this core is stable, you're leaving." Lyra's gaze softened. "And you? You stay?" Jake tightened a bolt. "This is your fight, not mine." He paused, then added, "But I'm not letting them take you while I'm still breathing." The last connection on the core sparked to life, the glow turning steady and bright. Jake set it carefully into a protective case. "All right, let's get this back to your ship." They loaded the core into the truck and drove toward the ridge while the sun was just starting to peek over the horizon. The silver vessel was still there, looking like a fallen star resting in the desert sand. As they approached, a distant rumble reached Jake's ears. He looked up and saw dark shapes in the sky. 3 small crafts moving fast. The mercenaries were closer than he thought. "Go!" he said, jumping out of the truck. The twins ran toward the ship, their movements quick. but graceful. Jake followed with the core, helping them slot it into the open compartment at the back. The moment it locked in place, the ship came alive, lights running along the hull, a low hum of power filling the air. But the crafts in the distance were getting bigger, closer. He could see their sharp, angular shapes now, designed for speed and intimidation. "Jake," Lyra said urgently, "they will land soon. You must hide." Jake shook his head. "No, I've got an idea." He ran back to the truck and grabbed a box of spare parts. Among them was a device he'd been working on for months, a high-frequency pulse generator meant to test radio interference. With a few adjustments, he could overload it, sending out a burst strong enough to scramble electronics in a wide radius. If it worked, it might just buy them the time they needed. As the mercenary ships drew near, Jake connected wires, flipped switches, and aimed the device toward the sky. His hands moved fast, every muscle remembering the old training. The twins were watching him from the ship's doorway, their faces tight with worry. When the crafts were almost overhead, Jake hit the switch. A sharp, invisible wave rippled out into the air. The sound was more felt than heard, a deep, resonating hum that made the ground tremble. In the sky, the three ships wobbled, their engines sputtering. One spun off course, another dipped dangerously low, and the third came to an awkward hover. Jake allowed himself a quick breath of relief. "Go!" he shouted to the twins. They disappeared inside the ship. The engines roared, the silver hull glowing brighter as it lifted slowly off the ground. Jake stepped back, watching as dust swirled around him. But even as the ship rose, he knew this wasn't over. The mercenaries would recover soon, and the twins had a choice to make. Would they leave now and never look back, or stay risking everything? The silver ship hovered a few feet above the ground, its hum deepening as the engines drew more power from the newly repaired core. Dust and sand swirled in a frantic dance around Jake, stinging his face. Inside the cockpit window, Lyra's hands were moving over glowing controls while Nova watched the skies, her eyes sharp and alert. But the mercenaries were not gone. The high-frequency pulse had crippled their ships for the moment, but even from where Jake stood, he could see one of them already stabilizing. The black angular crafts looked like predators circling prey, and Jake knew they wouldn't retreat so easily. He ran toward the ship, shouting over the roar, "You have to leave now!" Lyra's voice came through a small speaker near the entrance. "Hatch. We cannot leave you here. If they know you helped us, they will come for you." Jake waved the warning away. "This is my planet. I know how to disappear if I have to. But if you stay, they'll capture you." Nova appeared in the doorway, her silver eyes fierce. "We stay. They fight. We leave. They follow. Either way, danger." Before Jake could argue, the sharp hiss of engines cut through the air. The nearest mercenary ship was lowering toward the desert floor, its landing legs unfolding like the claws of some giant insect. A hatch opened on its side, and three figures stepped out. They were tall, clad in dark armor that shimmered faintly under the rising sun. Their helmets hid their faces, but their movements were confident, predatory. Each carried a weapon, sleek, compact, and humming with energy. The lead figure raised a hand toward the silver ship. A distorted voice boomed out, translated into English through some kind of device. "Surrender the vessel and the twins. Do so, and you may live." Jake's jaw tightened. He glanced at Lyra and Nova, who stood frozen, watching the mercenaries approach. Then he turned back toward the figures. "Not happening!" he called out. The leader tilted their head slightly, as if amused. "A human? You think you can stop us?" Jake didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back toward the truck where he had left the pulse device. It was still functional, but he doubted it would work a second time against ships already adapting to the first burst. He needed something else. And fast. Lyra's voice came again, sharper now. "Jake, "Get inside! The shields can protect you!" But Jake didn't move toward the ship. He moved toward the nearest stack of spare parts he kept near the ridge. Metal, plates, fuel canisters, and a few heavy tools. His mind worked fast, remembering something from his Air Force days. Improvised deterrence. If he couldn't match their weapons, he could at least make them cautious. He grabbed a small canister of pressurized welding gas and rolled it down the slope toward the mercenaries, following it with a spark from his portable torch. The resulting burst of flame was small but sudden, sending up a cloud of heat and smoke. The mercenaries paused, their formation breaking just enough for Jake to grab a second canister. The leader's voice turned sharper. "You interfere in matters beyond your world, human. This will be your last mistake." While their attention was briefly on him, Lyra took her chance. The ship's engines roared louder, sending a shockwave of wind across the sand. Nova activated something from inside, and a sudden shimmer surrounded the ship. A thin, transparent layer of energy. Jake guessed this was the shield they had spoken about. The second mercenary craft was now landing, kicking up more dust. Jake knew they were seconds away from being surrounded. He ran toward the ship, shouting, "You need to break through now!" Lyra's face appeared in the doorway again. "We can, but the shield will not last long under fire." Jake grabbed the edge of the hatch and pulled himself inside. The interior was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Smooth, metallic surfaces that seemed to flow together, controls made of light instead of buttons, and a faint scent like fresh rain in the air. Nova was already at a console, her hands moving in a blur. "We go now," she said. The ship surged upward, and Jake felt the weight of acceleration press against him. Through a side viewport, he saw the mercenaries scrambling back toward their ships, weapons firing bursts of energy that sizzled against the shield. The desert below shrank rapidly, but the mercenary crafts followed, climbing after them with frightening speed. Lyra pushed the ship harder, weaving between low clouds, trying to shake them. Jake braced himself against a wall, feeling every sharp turn. "They're faster than you," Jake warned. "Not faster," Lyra replied, "but more desperate." A blast from one of the mercenary ships struck the shield, sending a ripple of light across it. Nova's voice was urgent. "Shield's at 70%. Jake looked at the controls in front of him. "Can you push the engines harder? Maybe use some of the extra power from the core?" Lyra hesitated. "Yes, but it is risky. Overload could destroy the core." He met her eyes. "Then it's a risk worth taking." Nova gave a sharp nod, and the two twins worked in perfect synchronization. One rerouted power, while the other adjusted the navigation. The ship shuddered as the engines roared even louder, a deep vibration running through the floor. The mercenary ships tried to match the speed, but Lyra pulled a sharp turn toward the open sky, and for a moment they gained distance. Then, just as Jake thought they might escape, a new signal lit up on Nova's display. Another craft, coming from above. A trap. The mercenaries had planned for this. Jake's hands tightened into fists. They couldn't just keep running in circles. They needed to break free completely. "You told me this ship has some kind of shielding system. Can it do anything other than block hits?" Lyra's expression shifted slightly. "There is one function. A pulse. It pushes everything away, but it drains the core almost completely." "Do it," Jake said without hesitation. Lyra and Nova exchanged a quick look, a silent conversation passing between them. Then Lyra nodded and pressed her hand against a glowing panel. A low hum filled the cabin, growing into a deep vibration that seemed to shake the very air. Outside, a sphere of shimmering light expanded from the ship in every direction. The mercenary crafts were caught in it, their movements thrown off as if they'd been hit by an invisible wave. One tumbled sideways, another dropped altitude sharply, and the one above was pushed back just far enough for Lyra to dive the ship. Through the gap. Shields at 30%, Nova reported breathlessly. They had broken free. For now. The blue curve of Earth's horizon stretched before them, but Lyra didn't relax. They will follow again. They always do. Jake looked at both of them. Then you need to leave this planet, and you need to do it today. The twins were silent for a long moment. Then Lyra said softly, And you? Will you come with us? Jake hesitated, feeling the weight of the question. He looked out at the sky ahead, then back at the twins who had trusted him with their lives. That's not an easy answer. But even as he said it, he knew the choice would have to be made soon, before the mercenaries returned for another round. The desert stretched below them like a vast golden ocean as the silver ship surged higher into the sky. Dust and sand swirled faintly in the thin air, glittering in the early morning sun. Inside the cabin, Jake could feel the tension still thick, even though the mercenaries were temporarily behind them. Lyra and Nova were at the controls, their hands moving in perfect coordination, their silver eyes sharp and alert. But for the first time since he had met them, Jake noticed a flicker of doubt in those eyes. A question, unspoken, about whether leaving meant truly escaping or leaving a piece of themselves behind. Jake, Lyra said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of fear and hope. We can leave now, but it will be dangerous. They will follow. Jake nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. I know, but if you keep flying, you'll have a chance to get to safety. That's what matters. Nova glanced at him, her brow furrowing slightly. But you? You help us. You risk everything. Earth is your home. Why? Jake shrugged, trying to make his response feel casual, even though inside he felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. Because someone had to, and I couldn't just stand by while you were in danger. The ship hummed steadily, its shields glowing faintly around the hull. Jake felt the hum resonate through his chest, a strange comfort, almost like the ship itself was alive and aware of their shared purpose. He looked at the twins again, seeing how young they were despite their wisdom, how fragile yet strong they seemed all at once. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts again. We cannot go too far yet. We need to stabilize the core fully before we enter space. Otherwise, failure could mean capture. Jake leaned over, examining the controls she indicated. What do you need me to do? They guided him, explaining, in quick, urgent phrases, what adjustments to make, how to reroute the energy flow, and how to calibrate the stabilization field. His hands moved over the glowing panels, connecting circuits, adjusting dials, and rerouting power with precision. The twins watched him closely, their expressions filled with trust. Jake realized in that moment that they had placed their lives in his hands completely. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly. Outside, Earth's surface shrank further and further. The horizon curved, showing the thin blue line of the atmosphere. Jake felt a mix of awe and nervousness. This was far beyond any experience he had ever known. Lyra and Nova moved with unwavering focus, their synchronized movements reminding him of dancers, elegant and precise, balancing strength with grace. Finally, the core stabilized. The glow softened to a steady, warm pulse, signaling that the ship was ready for long-distance travel. Lyra exhaled deeply, a small smile breaking across her face. It is ready. We can leave Earth now. Fully. Jake felt a pang in his chest. He had helped them survive, helped them reclaim the ability to escape danger, but now he faced the moment he had been avoiding. The question of whether he would stay behind or step into an entirely new life beyond the stars. Lyra turned toward him, silver eyes searching. Jake, you helped us. You risked everything. Will you come with us? Stay with us. For a long moment, He said nothing. He thought of the quiet desert nights, the endless stretches of land he had called home, and the simple life he had built there. But he also thought of the trust, the bond, and the connection that had grown between him and these two extraordinary beings. The pull of adventure, of being part of something bigger, and the chance to protect them beyond just this. Night tugged at his heart. He began, then stopped, trying to find the words that could explain what he felt. I can't stay here knowing you'll face danger alone. I'll help you if I can. Nova's face lit with a mixture of relief and joy. Lyra reached for his hand, a gentle touch that conveyed more than words ever could. Then, you will stay? She whispered. Jake nodded. For now, and for as long as I can help. The twins smiled, their fear giving way to determination. They guided the ship upward, past the stratosphere, into the thin expanse where the stars shone brighter than they ever could from the ground. Earth became a tiny blue sphere behind them, fragile and distant. As they rose, Jake looked around at the control panels, the lights, and the alien instruments, realizing how far he had come in such a short time. He had gone from a simple desert mechanic to a protector of travelers from another world. His hands still trembled slightly from the adrenaline, but his heart felt steady, strong with purpose. Lyra and Nova spoke quietly, sharing fragments of their culture and memories. Floating cities, crystal energy, and planets filled with colors Jake had never imagined. They explained their bond, the psychic connection between twins, and the responsibility that came with their knowledge. Jake listened, fascinated and humbled by how much he had yet to learn. The first signs of the mercenaries appeared again as small blips on the distant horizon, but the twins' new shields held firm. Jake suggested a few tactical maneuvers, combining his earthly knowledge with their alien technology, and the ship moved with fluid precision, slipping past potential threats as if guided by instinct and intelligence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity and a lifetime all at once, the ship left Earth's orbit entirely. Jake stood near the viewport, gazing down at the planet that had been his home. He felt a pang of longing, but also a thrill for what lay ahead. The twins were beside him, their hands brushing against his, a silent affirmation that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Lyra smiled at him, her eyes soft and filled with gratitude. You risked your life for us, Jake. We will never forget. Jake returned the smile, feeling the bond deepen, knowing that even across galaxies they would carry a piece of each other. Nova adjusted the course, her focus calm but alert. The stars stretched endlessly before them, promising adventure, challenges, and discoveries beyond imagination. Then, with a soft hum from the engines and the glowing pulse of the core beneath their feet, the ship surged forward into the unknown. Jake felt his heart lift with it, a mixture of fear, excitement, and hope. Somewhere far away, two alien girls had found a friend, a protector, and perhaps more than that, a companion for whatever lay ahead. As the ship vanished into the depth of space, the last thought in Jake's mind was simple but powerful. No matter what challenges awaited them, they would face them together, and the bond they had formed would never break. The communicator crystal Lyra handed him sat on the console, glowing softly. Jake reached out and pressed it lightly, feeling a connection that stretched across light years. Somewhere out there, Lyra and Nova smiled. And in that moment, Jake knew that no matter where he went, no matter how far the stars took them, they had become more than just allies. They had become a family. The stars outside stretched on forever, full of mystery and possibility. And Jake, once a solitary mechanic in a quiet desert, now stood ready to face them all, with the twins beside him, asking him silently, "Will you stay forever?"